Come on. There it goes. Yes.
That's funky.
Yep.
Who is that?
Power, power. All right. All right. So we are live, and there's me coming up. And now, George, I'm going to pull you up. And
Pull me up.
there
Pull
you
me
are.
up.
There you are. And I've got your website up, and hey. So it looks like everything is working great now. We're
You don't have to sound surprised.
thanks for the show. Talk to you later. So now we are. This is actually recording. However, no one is seeing that yet until we won't be live until I actually select the setting. There it is. It's me, and in one moment we will be public. Oh, come on, get out of my way.
Get out the way.
Okay, only me, and now I'm making it public. Boom,
Ta-da.
public. We're live. It's live with George Shelby. Hey, George. Okay, so as we were talking a little bit ahead a minute ago, what this is doing, this is giving me a chance to see and talk to people that I haven't talked to for years, and they are being kind enough to talk to me because normally when I call, it's like, oh God, Jeff's calling. I'm busy. What the hell does he want?
Oh, Jeff News? Oh,
Right? Yeah. Right. Oh man. All right. So uh Eric Jorgensen and you and Harry Kim, and I just
yeah,
saw this. Eric's wife Audrey posted a thing on Facebook, and it was
right.
with you guys playing for the Grammys. Now, what part of the Grammys orchestra were you that you?
We were in the house band for the Grammy premiere ceremony, and the Grammy premiere ceremony is what happens during the day. So
Okay,
it's about 3 to 4 hours when they give all the awards. Best liner notes, best instrumental, best new age, the like 70, 72 awards they give out during the day. And Chicha Lara is the musical director, has been for the past few years, and gets together a great house band. And we play, all the award winners on and off, and the presenters on and off, and then we play with a couple of different artists depending on the year and who they want us to play with.
well, I have to say I was looking at who was in the band, and that's a pretty stellar all-star band. You, I mean, Vinny on drums,
Yeah,
right? And wasn't Jimmy Johnson playing bass?
Leland Sklar.
Least that's right. With
Yeah,
the beard was unmistakable. And then
right.
you, Harry Kim, and Eric,
In the horn section,
and who was the other trumpet player?
Rashawn Ross,
Oh,
who is out with the Dave Matthews Band when they're on tour. Rashawn's just a sweetheart and a beast of a player. So
right.
yeah, it was a good section. We had a lot of fun. And the great thing for us is when you're getting into the Latin awards, then we're playing all Latin cues. And when you're in the rock stuff, we're doing all rock cues. And the reggae awards, you're doing reggae cues. And so it's like 4 hours of different kinds of music that you're running through in the day. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And is that just during that one day?
Yes. Well, there's a rehearsal.
Mhm.
Um, there's a sound check day, there's a rehearsal day, and then you hit with the show. So, like everything else, there's a tight budget, so you don't get days and weeks to rehearse. You hit it as quick as you can, then do the show.
Right. And the minute the show is done, that the same day of the TV show?
Yes.
So you
Yeah. So
get the hell
we
out.
we literally run from noon. Well, we're in the Microsoft Theater, which is across the street
Oh,
from the
it's
Staples Center.
okay.
So we run our awards from noon to about 4, and then there's about an hour in between, and then usually people are walking the red carpet for the evening show, and they go into Staples, and then they do the primetime show. and they give out, I don't know, 6 awards, 7 awards at night, something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty good gig. Now, here's other gigs that I see you on, and I remember a couple of times. I think back in the first run of American Idol, I saw
Yeah.
you on there one day, and I think I texted you and said, "Nice dance steps."
Ah, here we go.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's a visual medium, right?
Right.
So, and the funny thing is, like Ernie Fields is the contractor on American Idol, and he was on The Voice for a lot of years.
Hmm.
And so they'll be looking at the stage for a certain number, and they'll go, it would look good, 12 strings. Ernie, get us 12 strings for this song. And Ernie's like, do you know what kind of strings you want? Well, no, just 12, so they're
Up there.
a lot of times those shows are really coming from a visual perspective
Mhm.
first,
Right.
and then we'll figure out the
Right.
music.
So did they say, okay, cut your hair, do the dance steps, wear some tight leather pants, that kind of stuff?
No, not for me. Occasionally you got to put on a hat or a pair of sunglasses or something like that, and
Yeah.
and it's fine because I've pretty much aged out of those shows now anyway, so I don't have to worry about any of that.
I was saying I am seeing some of the kids now, they can play, but I'm seeing
Sure.
a really young crop of guys coming up that are some pretty good players.
Oh, they're beasts.
And I kind
You
of
know,
hate it. It kind of makes me mad because I wish I was that good when I was that young.
you weren't? Sure you were, Jeff. Come
No,
on.
I'm still not that good.
You know what, man? Every year there's a new bumper crop of cats who come into town or who are working all over the place, and they play. They can all play.
They can
So
all
you got to watch out.
right. And then here's another time I remember texting you. I think Vinny was on the gig. You and Harry do a lot of work together.
Yeah.
It's almost like if we got Harry, we got to have George. If we got George, you got to have Harry. And you
You
were
don't have to,
oh,
but if it's our choice.
right. Um, you were I was watching some kind of I don't think it was an awards show, but it was a telethon or a nonprofit something, but it was in Vegas. And
Okay.
I think Vinny was on a few years back.
Right.
And do you go out to Vegas and do a bunch of shows out there frequently?
Not frequently, and once again, there are a ton of great players in Vegas.
Not in
So,
Vegas. No. No.
Rick Keller, sax player out in Vegas, fantastic player. There are a bunch of great guys out there. So it depends. And strangely enough, things kind of run in, like, I'll go out to Vegas 2 or 3 times in a 2 month span, and then I won't go out at all for 6 months. And
Mm,
it just depends on the contractor, and the people hiring you and who's bringing you out. And JJ Alara was the MD for the Grammy premiere show. He's also been the musical director for the Latin Grammys, which happens in Vegas.
mm.
So, guys get certain teams of players they're comfortable with and like to work with. And once you start getting a team together that you like to keep that team together because it's less to think about.
Right, right, right. Um, so a couple more questions, and then uh, let- I'll let you talk. Maybe you have a question for me, like what color is your car? My new car that I bought. No, because I'm going to have to give back to the bank.
Wow, look at the time. All right, well, I gotta
Sorry.
go.
So weren't you doing a lot of things out at Shumash?
Yeah,
And
yeah, I'm the contractor out at Chumash. So if Johnny Mathis is doing his show at Chumash,
mhm,
then he needs a 25-piece local orchestra. So I hire the orchestra, put it all together, let the guys know the time and the dress and what's going on. Then I coordinate with the casino so they have meal cards or something for the orchestra, and then I hook everyone up with the payroll company because everyone needs to get paid, and it's
right.
a union gig, so it goes through the union. So I need to file the union contract and get all that information in. So that happens at Chumash with various bands that will need whatever, a horn section, a string section, a full band, whatever they need.
Well, this is going to lead me into a couple of other things that I might want to do a whole show on this whole new AB5 law. And
Right.
how is that affecting, or how was it affecting what you were doing, or how was it looking it was going to be?
Well, first off, there's a lot of panic for
Right.
people because there's a lot of confusion and no one knew what was happening or what was not happening. Um, musicians, a lot of musicians work as independent contractors. So to suddenly be tossing taxes and payroll and all of that into the mix is a big wrench in what musicians are not used to doing. Now, I have a corporation, and when people pay me, they're paying my corporation. So AB5 doesn't affect me for people paying me. However, it's going to affect me if I now pay other people.
Right. So if you would call me up and go, "Hey Jeff, I need you to go do this $200 little hit over here," and I'll just Venmo you. You can't do that anymore, right?
Right, right. Now, technically, I would say I'm going to pay you 100 instead of $200. I'm going to pay you $160 or 152.80, whatever it works out to be, and the
Right.
rest is going to go to state, federal, on and on.
Right. So someone suggested yesterday, well, why don't you pay my drum for rental of a drum and then pay my drum rental, and then you don't have to pay me. You're just renting the drum.
And I'm playing for free. Yeah, I
Right.
mean that's an angle.
Yeah.
What's interesting now is that we suddenly hit the skids here with the economy,
Right.
and independent contractors, musicians can't really file for unemployment
Right.
because they haven't been paying into the system. So now we're looking at a case where, gee, if AB5 had been the law for years and everyone had kind of adjusted and went with it, now, as a musician, you would just file for unemployment and you'd be able to collect that.
Well,
So they're good and bad both ways. Personally, I think it's something you need to kind of ease the industry into if it's going to happen.
yeah,
To try and hammer everyone and just say this is now the way it's going to be. It's not going to work.
yeah, it would have been nice to have some sort of let's work into it. But this also brings up a lot of stuff in the news with this whole bailout. And there's this whole swath of people. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is because a majority of the country, I think, views the music industry as the Johnny Mathis guys, the Phil Collins, which I'll get to in a minute, those kinds of guys, and they fail to think of all of the people working underneath them that this affects that aren't necessarily on any kind of payroll, like you were just saying, we're independent contractors, or we've all sort of assumed we were that way. We can't collect unemployment. Uh,
Right,
we we try to file a loss on our tax return so we don't have to pay, 30% or whatever. At least, I mean, we try to keep that down. So then when I went to get a loan the other day, they said, "Oh, you didn't make enough money to qualify for a loan." And I'm like,
right,
uh,
right. It's very much a catch-22.
right. So
You know, if
we're in that little bubble of stuff that seems to be getting missed on this whole new bailout bill. Now I'm told that's not the case, but I'm curious to see how this all falls out. I mean, what's your take on that?
honestly, I don't think anyone knows because, first of all, who's going to get money? How fast are they going to get money? And what's the process going to be to get the money? And what's the payback going to be on the money that you get? Do you have to pay it back as a loan? Is this, a payout that you're doing? So I think we all have a million questions at this point. The only
Right,
thing that I think is pretty definite is nothing is happening tomorrow.
right,
So, everyone's gonna have to be a little patient and figure out, if they said tonight, okay, here's the online form and fill it out and submit it, how many millions of people are gonna fill out that form at the same time and
right,
clog the system? It's the same thing that in a much more serious matter, or just as serious, but what the hospitals are going through now
right.
with getting inundated with patients. So there's always going to be this bottleneck that happens, and then it slowly will hopefully start flowing correctly and doing what it needed to do. So it's gonna take longer. People need relief right now, and I don't think there's going to be relief for a bit of time.
Yeah, I agree. Now, here's the other thing that I think we as musicians and a friend of mine across the street was one of the lighting guys and video guys, and he was doing Lana Del Rey and New Kids on the Block and Willow Smith, some of those kinds of gigs. His his job is gone. Those kinds of touring gigs. So not only are we just as the local musicians gigging people, we're the first people to lose our jobs. All of us, all of those kinds of jobs, and we'll probably be the last people for our jobs to start coming back.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. I mean, there's a yeah, the trickle down effect for this disaster is going to go on and on and on because, like you say, the lighting guys, the sound guys, the guys who build the stage,
right,
the men and women who work all in the arenas and stadiums where the shows are happening, all the food concessions are gone. The janitors, the security, the transportation, the guys who are transporting the band, the gear, and like we were talking about earlier, all the restaurants in the surrounding area of arena and stadiums that are getting business from all those shows happening. So yeah, the ripple effect of this goes on and the problem is once if everyone said, okay, tomorrow everything's great and you can go back to work and living, there's first of all, people are scared, they're
right.
intimidated, and now you've shifted the mentality of people to now they're starting to get used to staying at home and they're starting to get used to their Netflix and whatever else they're entertaining with themselves online. So now you have to draw people back out to coming out and experiencing things in a group again. And I think it's going to take time to do that.
It's going to take a long time, and what I'm afraid of is the little bit of money that they're giving people for those of us. The day the World Health Organization announced the pandemic, my gigs started going like dominoes, and I my rent the next week I had 5 gigs that was going to pay this month's rent
Sure.
that disappeared. They're
Sure.
just now other people were still working. Restaurants are still opening. My gig was the first to go, and it took a week for everybody else to lose their gig. But now I could maybe hold on for 6 weeks. I could maybe hold on for maybe 2 months. But after that, if it keeps stretching out, I'm
Yeah.
toast. And
Yeah.
I'm not.
We're all going to be at Amazon delivering packages.
I actually applied for this Amazon Flex. Have you heard about that? You
No.
be you become like an Uber driver for Amazon where you can sign up for a block of time and
No.
then they'll say, "Hey, we need this package delivered," and you can make like 20, $30 an hour to go out and deliver a few packages in your local area.
Oh,
So
cool.
now I got approved, I got signed up, and I turned my app on, and have I had any calls? No. That's all we need is a 60-year-old musician in a minivan delivering.
Well, the problems just keep multiplying because now Amazon has people who are willing to be drivers, but their supply chain they're having problems with and getting the package out and getting them delivered. So
Right,
it's new territory for all of us. I will say at some point, whenever if it's next week or next month, this is going to pass
right,
and we'll start to pick up the pieces and put our lives back together. So this is not a permanent situation that we're in. um
right.
we really need a heat wave right now would be really fantastic, but so we have nothing in LA but rain for 2 weeks. Perfect.
Of course, to make it feel even like man, you're just stuck in your house. And
Right.
so this is a good segue though into another aspect of what you do in recording. And
Right.
I know we could talk about your Phil Collins because I want to that we talked one time about how sweet of a gig that was for you.
Yeah, it was
Um,
okay.
yeah, it was all right. It was cool. But uh, that Phil Collins gig, and you went to Australia and did that, and how for me to know that I know somebody that was playing in the band, I'm like, "Ooh, can I come over?" Just like
there are a couple of aspects to that. First of all, and you know this, and I know this, LA is stuffed with amazing players,
Yeah.
just stuffed to the brim. You can throw a rock in any direction and hit a bunch of guys who are all really on point players, really great at what they do. So I felt nothing but fortunate and grateful when Harry Kim called me up and said, it was December, and he said, Gerald Albright has decided that Phil is putting the band back together. Gerald Albright is going to focus on his solo career. So he's not going to go out on tour. Would you like to play sax with Phil? And after I stopped crying, I was yes, that would be good.
There's no crying in there's no crying
Right,
in gigs.
right. It was an opportunity that you hope, you dream, you think
Right.
about, wow, but you never think it's really going to happen. And that was December 16th, December 17th. I was at Harry's front door. Dude, where's the music?
Right?
Give me the music. I need the music. And he's like, we're not going to rehearse the horns until April, and we're not going to rehearse the band until May. I was like, give me the music.
The music.
Because and for a horn player especially, it's one of the best gigs in the world to play, just from the point of the kind of part you're playing. Living
Mhm.
Long Enough and Sussudio and all these great parts that Harry did a lot of the writing for and arranging on. It's just so much fun to play and really challenging, and it all had to be memorized. So I dug in, and it was a good 4 months of hardcore shedding.
Yeah, and well, I'll bet you were really happy to get that music and be able to get to that point. So when you showed up, you felt prepared.
And that's true for anything and everything, and not just Phil's gig, but going into well, I was playing on The Voice, and they were playing a song called Only the Good Die Young," Billy Joel song.
Right.
And so there usually has a sax solo on it, but they're like, "Hey, you don't have to worry about it because it's going to be a guitar solo for the show." So I'm like, "Oh, cool. I can just play the line sitting in with the band, and I don't have to worry about it." But it's one of those things where,
Right?
just in case,
Learn the
I
solo?
shed the solo, and I went through it a couple of times and did all that. And as we're walking on the stage, the musical director Paul Merkovich pulls me aside. He's like, "Yeah, no guitar solo. It's going to be sax solo. They're going to take you down into the audience, and they're going to throw you up on stage and have a great show. Two,
Oh,
three, four."
oh, 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 oh. If you would not have practiced, you would have shit your pants.
Well, you are to a certain degree, anyways, because you know it's going live to 10 to 12 to 14 million people. And it's like, okay, this is really happening. And they're in the middle of the song, and I'm kind of like down in the audience. And about two bars before their solo, they're like, okay, go up. And they send me up on this little riser in the middle of the audience and hit it. So, yeah, you always want to be prepared for the possibility of what might happen in those
Right?
circumstances.
I gotta say, I felt when you were telling that story, I'm thinking to myself, if I, the situations I've been in where I've thought, yeah, I'll be cool, I kind of know enough, and then somebody all of a sudden dumps it on me, and I go, ah, the the knot in the gut and the panic, a couple of times I pulled it off, but uh, being prepared for everything is so critical. It
As much as you can. You're never going to be prepared for everything, but you're
well,
always trying to look at, okay, best case scenario, worst case scenario. So if my mic falls off the horn in the middle of the show, what am I going to do? If I trip, which all these things have happened during the show, you just kind of want to kind of think through those scenarios. So when it happens, you don't freeze. You're just like, okay, now
right.
let's deal with this and move on.
So did you play the original sax solo or just did you do your own thing?
No, I totally went off and did my own thing. I think I did the opening lick for it and then just took off.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So uh uh what was I where was I headed with
So we
that?
were talking about playing with Phil and me
Oh,
doing the gig and going and prepare for it. And we started the first rehearsals, and I didn't tell anyone I had gotten called for it, because you never know what's going to happen in the situation. You
right.
never know if the guy's not going to like you, or if just there's going to be a rub, or so. I didn't say anything. And Harry had sent an email to Phil and he said, "This is the guy that I think we should hire on sax." And Harry's been with Phil for 25, 30 years. So Phil trusts his opinion. And Phil wrote back, "Well, I think this George Shelby guy is too tall, but okay, fine. Go ahead, bring him in." So fantastic sense of humor. And I went in and we rehearsed the first week, and he didn't say anything to me directly. Very
Mhm.
nice, very cordial, very polite, but no real directions or instructions. So after a week, I went up to him. I said, "Phil, I just I'm just checking in with you on the stuff I'm playing. Do you want me to play more or less? Or, you know, what do you think of what I'm playing?" And Phil looks at me deadpan. He just says, "I hate everything you've done so far." All right, cool. And that's when he joked with me like that. That's when I relaxed into the gig and went, "Okay, fine. We're going to
Right.
be fine now and just have a good time."
That makes me think of the rule of thumb is if somebody says, "Yeah, man, you're cool. Yeah, I like you," shit is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we insult our friends the most and constantly. And the
Right.
people, and you're right, the guys who aren't, quite cutting it, you're like, "Hey, good job. Okay." And move
Right.
on.
Yeah. And oh, how was that guy? How'd he sound? He was a really nice guy.
Right. Right. So, and I'm sure people have said that about me in my
Oh,
career
no,
at
no.
times. So,
Well, listen, this is one thing that, and I know that I've told you, and not that, I have any kind of weight in all of this, but especially as a sound guy, when I started doing sound, I could recognize the quality of the tone of your instrument and the sound you would get out of your instrument. I could recognize that as a player and go, George really has a nice sound.
oh,
When I
thank you, man.
started doing sound and really trying to get sax players to sound good, I I got to tell you, and I've told you this sonically, the sound that comes out of your horn is so warm and so big and full that I can put the EQ settings on flat and it sounds beautiful. And I am so tired of those tenor players that come up with this honky sound. They may be really known players and really good and have
Mhm.
and they get that honky sound, and I am doing everything I can to try to make it sound like your horn. And
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that. I was really there was a time when I got out of college when I wasn't happy with my sound at all. I just wasn't happy with the tone. And I thought, okay, who in town sound do I love the most? And for me, that's Ernie Watts. His sound is
Mm,
just gorgeous. And
mhm,
he was, back then he was doing all the Quincy Jones recordings and playing in the Tonight Show band. So I called Ernie, just cold called him and said, "Hey, can I come and take a lesson?" And we went back and forth. It took a while, but finally Ernie was like, "Yeah, okay, sure, come on over." So I sat down with Ernie. I said, "I don't know if it's my horn or my mouthpiece or my reed or what the problem is, but it just doesn't sound good." And Ernie says, "Give me your horn." And he takes my horn with my neck and my mouthpiece and my reed, and he just plays the shit out of it for the next 10 minutes. And he goes through like the history of the saxophone on my horn. He's playing screaming R&B. He was on tour at the time with the Rolling Stones, so he did
mm.
some rock and roll solos on it, this fluffy subtone stuff. He just played everything. And my mouth is on the floor. Finally, he stops and he looks at me and he looks at the horn. And he looks at me and he looks at the horn. And he looks at me and he says, "Well, it's not the horn."
Oh my God.
Okay, thanks, Ernie. See you next week. But it was a great lesson for me in that the musician produces the tone, and the instrument should make it as easy as possible for the musician to produce that sound. But it's coming from the musician first and foremost.
What did you have to change in your body in the way you blew into the horn, how you would breathe, and what did you change to get?
I it, it first of all, it changed my mentality because I stopped
Mm,
trying to find gear that was going to get my sound and started creating my sound internally because I'm creating the sound. So it's a wind instrument, so I'm creating the wind. So damn it, do something. But a big thing for me was actually backing off and not playing as hard
mm,
because if you're leaning into the horn too much, the tone really thins out. And so for me, if I backed off, suddenly this more beautiful kind of fuller sound emerged. So
Mm.
for me, instead of pushing so hard, it was like, whoa, lay back, bring it back a little, son.
That so when you start then really digging into, you like, let's say you're doing a solo on Susudio and you're
Right.
really digging in.
I'm not, but go ahead.
And uh what it's the natural tendency would be to really start pushing in and digging in like
Well, here's the concept that I talk about with students is that when you're at home, practice like you're on the biggest stage that you can think of or that you want to think of. If it's American Idol on the finale back in the day, there were 30 million people tuning in, or
right.
you know, if it's a stadium with 80,000 people, or if you're doing the Grammys, whatever it is, when you practice, dedicate some of your practice time to just put yourself mentally in that place. And I'm in a stadium or I'm in front of a lot of people. When you get to the stadium, when you get to the performance, play as if you're at home.
Mm.
Relax, sit back. Everything, the audience picks up when you're nervous or when when you have that tension, or you've got to take command of the moment. And a lot of times you take command by relaxing into it. And that kind of brings everything to where it should be.
It's almost a mental zen kind of practice, a calm,
Very
a
much so.
yeah. And did you need to take time within yourself to try to get at that state?
Dude, I fight that constantly. There are
Well,
constantly times I'm playing. It's like, oh, lay back, relax, come back,
you
take it
know,
easy.
since I've known you though, just me, I've known you maybe 20 years. I think I when we did the first gig together, um, I have never recognized you as being any kind of person other than being completely laid back and at ease in every moment. So,
Yeah, no.
I mean,
Thank you, but no.
but my gigs were like, yeah, dude, yeah, whatever. It might be different when you're on the stage for the voice. It might be, I'm guessing that is different, but the
It's it's really when you get into gigs where you traveled all night and then you got to the hotel and the hotel room wasn't ready, and then you didn't have time to shower and you had to go right to the venue, and there wasn't time to, and then the sound check was horrible and the sound was bad, and then you went to catering and the dinner was horrible and nothing worked out, and now get on stage and have a great time. you
dude,
know
I gotta, go. My quick story.
yeah.
I went out with Tower for like 10 days and did a few dates, and you're the as the sound guy. It was a new guy, just dumped into the monitor world, right?
Nice.
And it was great. And I prepared, but what I wasn't prepared for, and I was too nice to the local house guys, the guys that would bring all the amps and be my A2. I'm the A2, like the monitor guy, and then I got an assistant.
Right. Right.
First night they fucked me big time. I'm I'm buried behind some curtains. I can't hear shit. We do the sound check. It goes okay. They have another band. Now, what happens is they swapped everything around, muted the amps, and all the wedges were off. I had no clue that the wedges were off. And we're doing line checks and we're seeing everything. I don't have my Q wedge up. So we're all seeing, line, and we're seeing it all. The band comes out, bam. And everybody's looking at me like, where the fuck are our monitors?
Oh, ouch.
It was one of those things. It was one of those kinds of nights, and one of those, it was just like you were talking about. You're jumped up there, and it's boom. Now we got things worked out. It took a couple of minutes, but it
Yeah.
just set the tone for the rest of the night. And
Right, and so that's what you're fighting against is, everyone can sit. A lot of musicians are great at sitting at home and sound great and play great, but go out and then not have great circumstances. And the paying customer doesn't know that you had a lousy flight, that your hotel room wasn't ready, that your meal was loud, that the sound is bad. They just know what's happening in that immediate moment. So
mm,
it really becomes so important for you to stay present and be in the moment and ready for whatever's happening, and kind of, brush that stuff off and go, okay, here we
right,
go. Let's
just
have a
keep
great
on going.
show.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, I want to transition a little bit into the other aspect of what you're doing, and to see if that has dried up too, any of the recording stuff. But because I know you did, weren't you doing some movie soundtrack stuff or any of that?
Sure, sure. We did the Adams Family a few months ago, and uh, Greg's Lap has an album. He's a harmonica player in France. His project's coming out, and everything that a lot of stuff we record right here in this room. We got the mics and the gear and everything, and especially for horn sections, this room is tweaked for horn sections. If you want to record something else, go something else. Go somewhere else. But I have this room set up to do horns. Like you see the curtains in the back, I can
Right.
open or close those curtains all through the room to make it a more live room or a more dead room, depending on what kind of a sound we're looking for.
Right.
So, the short answer to your question is, for me, all work has stopped because all work has gone into hold.
Mm,
Everyone has slammed the brakes. I have a line of things that need to get done, but when this all hit, when the pandemic hit, everyone went, okay, just wait a minute, just hang on.
everything, even the session stuff.
Right. Right. For me. Now, I know some other guys are still working on stuff, but for me personally, everything, everyone put the brakes on stuff and we're on hold now. So that's where we're at.
I can't, yeah, I can't imagine that too much of well, I suppose session stuff could work because a lot of guys were primarily isolated doing sessions.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, the funny thing for me is in the middle of all this home sheltering and self-isolation, personally, my life doesn't change that much
Mine,
because
mine
I
either.
get up, I come into the room, I work on my stuff, I practice, I go in the house, I have some lunch, I come back out, I work again,
Right.
so my day to day hasn't really changed. And I think for a majority of musicians, a lot of that has not changed either. It's just that now there's no place to go out on the weekends, during the week, at nighttime. None of that's happening. So that's the adjustment. But the day to day, yeah, it's the exact same.
Right. Yeah, uh my thing was for me, I didn't have any only time I left and went out of my house and around people is when I had gigs.
Right,
And when I don't have gigs, my life hasn't changed. I
right,
hang out in my house, I go on a bike ride and I'm not around anybody, then I come home, I cook dinner. And so nothing has really changed except for I don't have any gigs to go to, and have to
right.
prepare for anything. And I remember I've hired you to do a few things, do like some horn sections and stuff,
Sure.
and you do it right there. And I wonder if moving forward, as think are things do you think things like the way we record music and the way we do stuff online already, like when I recorded a few tracks last year, I had you do horns, I had Nelson Braxton do bass lines down, and he's in Marietta, and I had a keyboard guy in Santa Monica, guitar here in Burbank, and everybody would email me their file. And as we do that and put things together, is it are we looking at a new way of doing things online completely? Even as an artist, let's say, um, Phil Collins, he goes, okay, I'm going to do a record, and I'll just play here, but you guys, make the recordings, email them to me, then I'll perform it in my home studio, stream
Oh,
my.
yeah. I mean, well, yes and no. I mean, a majority, I mean, the last session I did before everything shut down
Mhm.
was at Capitol Records. Dwayne Benjamin called me to play in a horn section for Tony Braxton, and we did a session there for her. And that was kind of the last big session I did at Capitol in the big room and the whole thing. A lot of fun, sounds great.
Mhm.
But the majority of work I do is here in the room. And I think for a lot of guys, the majority of work they're doing is in their rooms.
Right.
So I think that's just going to grow. And, it used to be like I can play penny whistle because I learned and it's kind of an easy instrument. And if guys needed 4 bars of penny whistle, they'd say, hey, can okay, sure. But now
What
they
is
can just
what is a
go to
penny?
Dublin. They
What
can just go to
penny?
Dublin, Ireland, and
Oh,
get the penny whistle master, to play on their stuff and send it back.
it,
So it's been a great equalizer in terms of now they don't have to just in Los Angeles, you don't just have to work with Los Angeles musicians. If you
Mhm.
want taiko drums on your recording, you can get in touch with the guy in Japan who's the taiko drum master or
Right.
whomever, you know.
Right.
So, but the flip advantage is that now anyone who wants to record with a LA horn section can get in touch with us. We record the parts here, like with Greg's Lap, this harmonica player. He sent us the tracks. We laid the horns here, sent them back.
How many
So
how many horns can you do in your room?
I can do up to six easily, but generally it's a four horn section because it's usually a pop section that I'm doing here.
Uh-huh.
So in general, it's a four horn section. Um, but so you were talking about work in the room. So there's a ton of work. I would say the majority of work is happening in rooms like this all over the world. We're
Right.
not, the next step is going to be when internet speeds are so fast that we can be in our separate rooms playing at the same time. We're not there yet.
No, I was actually talking to a couple of guys about that. How if you were playing there, your horn, and I've got a cajon here,
Right.
there's just enough of a delay and latency that there's no way we could do that.
No, there isn't. There you can do it on a T1 connection, but
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
it's prohibitively expensive at this point. So I'd say, I don't know, 5, 10 years from now, will the speeds will probably be at the point where we can do that, where you can play there, I can play here, and the speeds are so fast that the delay is minimal.
So that would be great for quarantining everybody.
Yeah, that would work for that. You know, what I do know is that coming out of times like this, like when we hit the recession in 2008,
Hmm.
and then work started to come back, people will pay for quality, but you have to give them quality. You
Hmm.
know, but before, like in 2006 and 7, it was just getting ridiculous, and it's like we want Chinese acrobat horn sections to do flips and spins while they're playing, and you know, ridiculous requests. After the recession hit and business came back, they were like, we just want people who can play really good. We'll pay for the session. So, you know, quality is always going to work and have work, but it's going to take a minute to come back. And I think you need to find how to give people some value added uh, product to whatever it is you're offering.
Hmm.
Let me play a little longer for you. Let me play a little cheaper. Let me add something for you. Whatever it is, I think we're all going to be looking for a little value added product to offer the consumer to help get our work back.
Right. Well, one thing that I do, or somebody actually emailed me about a gig in August, and I said, "Well, you're being optimistic, but yes, I'm available. And but I'm going to work for the same price I did last year. And even though I need the money, I'll do the same price, but I'll show up early. I'll go out of the way. I'll stay longer. I'll bring more mics. I will do more work, but I got to make the same money because the minute I start, you, lowering my price too much because people are going to take advantage. I need work. Oh, come out and work for a couple $100. I don't want to go too low, but I'll, like you said, I'll add more to what I'm doing. I will go out of my way. Once you pay me the money I asked for, I will
Right.
go above and beyond.
Right. It's real interesting too, the mentality that we get into. When my son is 25 now, but when he was born and my wife was Linda, she was staying at home taking care of Jordan. And then I was like, man, I'm gonna have to take every $20 gig to try and make ends meet. And what happened was I love being home with them so much that I was like, if you can't meet my price, I would just rather stay at home. So kind of the opposite happened. It became worth it. It's like, nah, I need to make this amount of money, otherwise I'll just stay home with the family. So
Right.
you're absolutely right. Everyone has to kind of define where their line is, and it. But if you take the gig, then take the damn gig. Show up,
Shut up.
smile, have a good attitude, do the
Right.
damn gig.
Well, I think though, what I discovered especially with sound, when I first started doing sound, I did lots of little gigs. But when I finally decided I'm worth this much money and I'm only going to go out that much, the gigs that I got were gigs that paid that much.
Right.
I and I got more. of gigs that paid that much. I didn't get
Right.
less.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's
And, plus, if you go out for, if you're the $10 guy and you go out for $10, then you become the $10 guy. And when they
I,
only have $10, they call you. And then
yeah,
when they have $1,000, they call the $1,000 guy. It's not like they go, okay, now I have more money, so let me hire you. The mentality doesn't work that way.
mm.
So you're right. You kind of determine how much money you're going to make to a certain degree.
And bottom line is when someone calls you, especially now that you have a reputation and people know you are your sound, your work ethic, everything, and they say, I really need George. You are going to tell them, well, I kind of need this much money. And they'll go,
Right.
okay, we'll spend that because George is George. And what you bring to the table is worth the money.
Well,
And
thank you. And I think that's true for anyone. And we talked about the difference. There's a difference between hiring a sax player and wanting to hire David Sanborn, wanting to hire Kirk Whalum, wanting to hire a specific name to get their sound in what they do. And that's always an income jump for that player when they're getting hired
right.
specifically.
A long time ago, when I was younger, I was hired to do a session, and I kind of sucked at it, but I was hired to do the session back in Omaha, Nebraska. I was traveling through, and the musical director for Gordon McRae. You know who from
Sure.
Oklahoma.
Sure.
It was a recording session for his record, and so I was sitting and having a conversation with that musical director, and he said, people will pay for a sound. They won't necessarily pay for quality or whatever, but if you, like you were saying, if you want a sound of David Sanborn, if somebody wants that sound, they will pay for that sound.
Absolutely.
And that's Kenny G, of all people, is one guy. The minute he plays, you instantly know it's Kenny G.
That's right.
And and, and I did sound for him on one gig, and uh, I the reverb unit that he wanted was, I think it was a Lexicon P something 90 or something from like 1990.
Right.
I didn't do sound back then, so I didn't know how this unit worked. I looked all
Right.
over town. I found two units. One of them was questionable whether it worked, and the other one sort of worked when you turned it on. So I go through and I set all the settings. I powered it down. I go out to do the gig, and I turn it back up. I've got all the settings, and he goes, "It's not right." I said,
No.
"No, I put the settings your sound guy put in there," and Kenny's like, "No, it's absolutely not right. There is something wrong with it." And I'm going, "Oh my god, what could it be?" And then we call his sound guy and said, "On this particular unit, if you power it down, you have to go to this menu and go to layer B and select this, and that resets every time you power it down." And it was
Oh
just
man.
a tiny little pre-delay thing, but
Right.
it was something that he could hear. I couldn't tell the difference, but he knew it.
Right.
And
Right.
because he had that sound, and he said it's got to be this sound. As a matter of fact, the guy who owns that Lexicon unit called me a couple of months ago and said, "Hey, somebody from North Dakota wants to rent this for Kenny G." Nobody
Well,
can
there you
find
go.
that thing anymore.
Man, and the thing that people have to remember, if Kenny G or Barbara Streisand or Phil Collins or whomever it is, when they go to hear that particular person, they don't know if the reverb's wrong or the sound is not right, or they just know, oh, that person didn't sound good that day.
Right.
So there's a tremendous amount of pressure on the artist. I we used to play with Joan Rivers, God love her, when she would come to town, and she always wanted a fresh, uh, you know, microphone cover in the package. Like you had to give her the microphone cover in the package that she would then open up and put on the microphone.
Wow.
Because she was like, I do 100 dates a year, I can't get sick. So I need to see, because, some of these microphones have gotten the
Oh,
crap kicked out of them.
I always lick them clean before, I
Right.
so Bruce, do you know the Four Preps, a old band, a doo-wop band? and
Right.
the leader of the band was this guy Bruce Belland, and we came up, and he was a really kind of hardcore guy, just doesn't joke around, and or at least not to me. I put down the mic, and he looked at it kind of funny, and I looked at him and said, "Don't worry, I licked it clean." And he kind of stepped back and he looked at me like, "Are you serious? Did, did you really lick my microphone?" Then I finally had to go, "Dude, I'm really just joking." And he just kind of ignored me. Later on, as he loosened up, he said he thought I was being kind of funny. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Man, those people have a lot of pressure on them, and they've got it. And like I say, they people don't know that the consuming public doesn't know. Oh, there was a problem with the lights, or there was a problem with this, or there's a problem. They just know the person I paid to see wasn't as good as I was expecting. So,
right,
there's a tremendous amount of pressure on that artist, and it's my job as your backing musician that you should never have to think about me one time. Like when you call me,
mm,
that's the last time you should have to think about me,
right,
right? You don't have to worry. Is he going to be there on time? Is he going to be prepared? Is he going to know the music? Is he going to have a good attitude? None of that should be in your thought process because you have 1,000 other things you have to worry about out there. You
right,
don't need problems back here.
right,
So, I've always tried to be that, invisible guy for the artist, whomever it was, that yeah, you don't have to think about me for the rest of the night. Now you just go focus on the other things you need to focus
right,
on.
right. All right, so we're getting close to the. We've been talking about 50 minutes, getting close to an hour. You were talking about a penny whistle.
Right.
Is a penny whistle?
All right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a traditional Irish penny whistle.
Oh, it's just a like a little,
Yeah.
it's just a little flute.
Penny whistle.
Woohoo! So you know, so it's almost like a. Can you get them in different keys?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so if somebody comes in and says, "Here's this song," and it's in the key of B flat, you got to have a B flat penny whistle.
Yeah, it depends. Or if you want to play in B flat minor,
Oh,
then you need the relative minor penny whistle. It's the same thing with harmonica, right? Where's the harmonica?
do you play guitar?
No. I just like the look of it in the studio.
And the skeleton, is he? I didn't know you played harmonica.
So I got called in 2006. A friend of mine called. He was on tour playing with a French singer named Johnny Halliday, and he needed to come off the road. He was playing sax, and he said, "Can you take over this tour with Johnny Halliday in France? Great tour, a lot of fun. Johnny's a legend in France." And I'm like, "Sure. What do you need?" He's like, "It's tenor sax, and you play flute on one song, and so you'll fly to Paris next Tuesday, and you'll join one of them." And then just as he's about to hang up, he's like, "Oh yeah, and you play harmonica on a few songs. Okay, bye." Click. What? 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 So yeah, for about a week, I was practicing harmonica and played it on the gig and had a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. But yeah. What do you need for the gig? Whatever it takes, we try and do it for you.
Do you play accordion too?
No accordion. I started on accordion. Milton Mann, Milton Mann School of Accordion. They give you the accordion, and you pay a very small fee. This is back a million years ago, and you do lessons with like 60 other accordion players in a room, and you're all sawing away. And at the end of the month, they pulled my parents into the room and they said, "We got to tell you, George is amazingly talented on accordion. And if you buy this $4,000 accordion for him, he's really going to go far." And that's when my dad was like, hang on now.
Give him a harmonica.
And that's when he switched me to the sax. He switched me to the
Oh,
sax the next month.
oh man. Well, I'm really glad that you became the sax player because whenever the things that you've done for me, man, I've said this to you a few times. I wish that I was able to hire you more and
Me
do
too, especially now.
oh, I tried, that nurse gig I was trying to do, and I wanted to do the whole horn section and read and record all of those songs. They ended up calling me the following year and saying, we're not going to use the band anymore. We're just going to go to a DJ.
There you go.
I know. Dang it. At least they could have, if they would have just coughed up the money, we could have at least got the money first. And anyway, so George, you're able to go to my Facebook page and share this if you want. Some of the things that you said, if there are any startup musicians or musicians wanting to get into this, we covered a lot of topics and you offered some real valuable information from the contractor standpoint and the AB5 thing and being a corporation to road gigs to session work to doing the $200 gig down the street. If bars ever come back, we can still work for pizza and beers.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
if we can get some bars back, we'd be in good shape. So,
We'll do something. We'll figure it out.
right. So George, I thank you for taking the time, and I'm going to do my usual closing thing, and then sign us off.
Are we
Uh,
going out with Tower Power?
I am going to go out with Tower. It's off their latest record called "Step Up," and it sounds great. And Tommy Politzer playing.
Yeah.
Tom's he's another one of those you guys. I would, man.
Tom's a bad boy. I love Tom's playing. He's
Yeah,
very cool.
yeah. So well, I'm taking out with Tower of Power. This should be them.
Ever wonder
Right?
why life just passes
All right,
by?
George. With that, I'm signing us off. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.